Okay, cue Heather, sorry.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you, Chris. This is a super exciting project, and I'm happy to say a quick hello and then hand it off to Chris. I'm Heather Peters. I am MTC and ABAG's principal regional housing planner. And I'm the PM for all of our regional housing technical assistance. So I oversee all the different modules, and public outreach is one of those modules led by my colleague Leah here, who is our project manager on this software. But I just wanted to drop in for a minute and thank you all for applying and for doing such a good job on your applications. I know that I used to work at the local level in San Mateo County, and I know that the bandwidth to be able to just apply, much less participate in something like this, is a commitment. So thank you for that commitment. This product is so innovative and so exciting. Most of you are probably aware that at Plan Bay area, we used gamified public input with a program called City of Bayville, Mayor of Bayville. And we got such great increase in feedback from hard to reach populations and just busy populations. So this is like the next great thing. This is gamifying public input on Reno, which is exponentially harder, in my humble opinion, than putting together Plan Bay area. So thank you all for doing that. Chris's team is going to take it from here, and I'm really excited to see what you all do with this tool.
All right, thank you so much, Heather. It's really exciting to be here. I'm also going to say that this is an exciting day when this is actually coming to pass. When Leah first contacted me in May, I think it was, about the possibility of doing something on a large scale like this, it was really exciting. So typically our work in the last 6 or 7 years with our simulation has been based on budgets, but then we've had a few planning directors, actually 2 independently from different parts of the world, different hemispheres, one in Australia and one in the Central Valley of California, had the idea of adapting it specifically for the housing element and specifically for the challenge of the RENA goal. And it's been just a fantastic time in the last 4 or 5 months as we've made adaptations of the software and enhanced it significantly. And every time we've worked with a planning director with a city, we've learned something significant and new. And thank you so much for ABAG to support us in taking those features and those strategies and techniques and helping us to build them into the software so that they can be configurable settings, which makes them very accessible, quick to implement, and also cost effective. So thanks to the both of you. I want to, it's going to be a little bit of ongoing engagement with you. We are looking to learn from you and learn with you, and hopefully our software will do what you need it to do, but we also want to have an ongoing conversation with you. So I want you to know a little bit of our team, just for the sake of moving forward. I'm not going to have each of them introduce themselves separately, but these are the 4 people who would be mostly involved with helping you. So to me on the upper left, I want to give a special shout out to Dan Ferguson. He's our senior software engineer. He has been working on this for a long time, but specifically on the new features that we've been creating for ABAG very diligently since July, and it's some really good stuff. And so a special shout out to him. We also have Amy Flynn, who's director of sales. She's actually a Bay Area resident. And then we have oh gosh, Garrett, your name isn't on there. Excuse me. The guy on the lower right there is Garrett Hernandez Reimer. He's director of customer success, and I made these slides a little bit too quickly last night, so I apologize for that, Garrett. But we've got, I'm going to give you your email address in a little bit towards the end, because I think people may want to be in contact with you. And I also want to, I mentioned to people before we started recording, this is intended to be a learning cohort, a user group of sorts. And so we want to, I'm assuming that a lot of you know each other already, but this is intentionally set up as a Zoom meeting, not a Zoom webinar. So it's not a one-to-many, it's a many-to-many. So we're hoping to learn together and to share strategies and ideas and how you use the software and various things like that. So please, feel free to raise your hand if you want to say something. Feel free. You're not going to be muted by default. There are going to be some opportunities, specific opportunities for you to actually answer a couple of polling questions, which I found in a large group like this can sort of sharpen conversation. Then we'll have some discussion about some things that might help us to help you more. So the agenda for today. Welcome and intro. So please, put your name in the chat. Even though we don't have time to, I don't think it's a good use of our time actually to have everybody introduce themselves. We do care about each and every person on the call and want to kind of know who people are. And then I'm going to give you just a quick overview of Balancing Act for Housing. And there's lots of permutations. It's a fairly adaptable, extensible simulation, but we've actually identified 3 major use cases. And there's little inflections here and there that you might want to take note of. But I'm just going to kind of show you those. And I know that a lot of you have probably already seen this, and so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I am going to go over it just because I want to make sure that we all at least have that common background about what it is that we're talking about. And then I want to ask you, how do you anticipate using the simulation? So we've built features based on our understanding of the challenges you're facing. We've had some good real life experiences working with real life California cities that have been working on this. But we want to have a little bit more of a conversation with you about what you anticipate so that we can be sure to, to the degree possible, provide you as much support as possible. And then I also want to talk about learning opportunities. A friend of mine is an experienced planner in California. He's done both as a public official and also as a consultant. I think he's done maybe 24 housing elements over the last 2 or 3 years. And he's got some really nice insights about what actually can help to move a city or a county through something as challenging as a housing element. So we actually want to talk to you about what some of those challenges that you see are, and then possibly add some learning opportunities and bring in some expertise that maybe we don't have here at Balancing Act, but just to kind of help you think about how you can use this new opportunity. I'll just tell you, I think of the simulation as a tool, and it's not the beginning and the end of the conversation. It might be the beginning, but the best way for it to be a beginning is to think of it as a way to frame a conversation, to frame a public conversation. And with you all as public leaders, this is an opportunity to lead a conversation, to use this tool to support a realistic, fact-based conversation. And as Heather was saying, in some ways to gamify it, and without getting too game-ish, the real benefit is to share that you all have a common goal that you need to accomplish, and that is to meet the allocation. That's the main thing that Balancing Act does, is it requires people who are providing input to actually think about the entire goal and to sit in your shoes and to think about trade-offs. And so that's what we think is valuable. And so we'll be looking at some other resources besides just the tool itself, because we don't think the tool is going to be the final word at all, but we think that it could be a really effective way, really effective leadership tool for you all to have the right kinds of conversation to lead to success. And then we're going to talk a little bit just about this group and how we're going to set this up. And we respect everyone's time, so we're going to move as quickly as possible. But we also understand that there's a lot going on, and that the tool can actually do a lot of things. And so we're going to make sure to provide you the resources that you need as well, and have a conversation about that. So I want to talk about our 3 main use cases, and I'm going to start with what I think, and what based on conversations with people like yourselves, planners and public leaders. I think that probably the order is not that you have to follow an order. It's completely up to you. But we've got kind of 3 main versions of the tool that we're making available to you through this ABAG opportunity. So the first one is type of housing, and this was pioneered by Sutherlandshire, Australia. And the idea here is and they're using they actually have a very similar challenge to those of you in California that have the RENA challenge, is to begin to get people thinking beyond just single family, and to think about what might be some other things. I'm going to show you that in just a sec. Second one is what Elk Grove, California did, and they actually looked at specific sites, and they use this later in the process to actually get public input on what recommendations the professional staff should make to the planning council and ultimately to the city council. And then the third type is really innovative. It really kind of took this from a quantum leap forward. When we started working with Lafayette, California, they've got a BART issue that's associated with their housing element, and so they are probably a little bit ahead of in terms of scheduling most of the Bay Area cities. And so we worked with them, and we came up with this idea of adding a map to it, and then looking at density by area. And we think that's actually really interesting. And then this is Eastvale, California, and they're also looking at sites, but then they also wanted to look at density by sites. So I'm just going to quickly show you these things. Once again, if you do have a question, feel free. We have a large group, but it doesn't mean that we can't have some conversation. So I'm going to just show you the basic elements of it, so you can understand kind of what the functionality is, and the key is what is the interaction, what is the resident being asked to do when they participate. So this is Sutherland Shire, Australia. I'm just going to skip through this opening matter. We're going to have a whole session on how you create these, and it's very intuitive, but we want to make sure to give you the resource you need to understand that. And so in Sutherland Shire, what I was told, I had a conversation with their planner last week. I had to meet very late in the afternoon, and they met first thing in the morning, the next morning. Is that they're going to have 83,000 homes that they need to find, units that they need to expand zoning for, to upzone for in Queensland, Australia. And so they're really starting out just at a conceptual level. So it's saying, okay, let's just say it's 1,000 homes. And then, how can we meet that goal with certain types of housing? And so over here, they've got on the need side, they just say we have 1,000 homes, and they put a padlock on it so that people can't adjust it, because that is the challenge that they're being asked to work on. And if you go over here to single family dwellings, you can get some information on it. And by the way, all these start out at 0, and it's all depicted as 0 over here on the donut chart. And they talk about what these are and so forth. And then they said that they actually can only have 30 single dwellings, and that's actually not just a made up number. It's looking at the number of lots right now that could be available for single family homes, and it's really just 3%. So that's why you get 30. Well, and I'll show you just in a moment. They put a limit on it, so you've got 1,000 homes they're shooting for, and they put a limit on 30. So say that somebody just wants to go in here and add single family dwellings. They put a limit on it. They stop you at 30 and say, you know what, we can't go any further than that, because that's really all the practicalities of the space that's available would allow. So they put a hard ceiling on this. And so that's one of the things that we'll be sharing with you, is how do you put, constraints? So the same constraints that you're facing, how do you share those on the simulation, so when people provide you input, they have to take them into account as well. And then down here, they're just kind of educating people about different types of housing and so forth, villas and townhouses. And if you start to add there, that actually goes up much more quickly. Apartments go up even more quickly. So the idea here is in Sutherland Shire, and Sutherland Shire is a little bit like what Sausalito is to San Francisco. It's a lovely city that's right on the bay. It's kind of constrained by water, and they don't have a lot of available resources, land resources, and it's also very expensive. And so they're using this now, but then they're going to move on to the other types that Elk Grove and Eastvale and Lafayette have done. Okay, let me show you Lafayette. So they've been really fun to work with as well, very innovative. They put in a little video here to kind of describe what the housing element is, and then they provide some additional information and so forth. And what they did that was really innovative was they kind of take it one step further than Sutherland Shire in Australia did. Is they said, okay, let's look at areas, and where do we think, what parts of town should we be thinking about increasing density? And then they're the ones that came up with the idea of asking us to put in a map. And it was really a fun, challenging process to do. And so over here, you've got their buffer. And so they let residents, sort of choose a different type of buffer. And, their default setting is 50%, which is 1,000 units. And then they've got the RENA allocation up here, and that's padlocked, and, people can't adjust it. They explain what that is, and you could even say why it can't be adjusted if you want. And so that's the left side of the equation, what we're calling the requirements. And then on the right side, you have the opportunities or the choices. And so there's a setup so that you can click on the map and you click on an area. So this is West End, north of Mount Diablo Boulevard, starting out at 35 dwelling units per acre. And that has a yield of 139 units. And as you increase that density, you start to whittle this number down on the upper left here. That's the total number needed. Fairly slowly, but you also it's the density increase is indicated here on the area, and so you can continue to do this in other areas. The one that has the most opportunity is this area number 9 down here, and so if you do that, it moves things very quickly. And as you can see, I need to move my zoom bar here out of the way. As you can see, as you get closer to that midpoint towards the goal, it still says you do not have a housing plan, but as you get to across that bar, it says you have a housing plan. And that's what we found from planning directors and public officials just universally, is that this is just a relief to them. because when people are providing this input, sometimes it's very heated input, sometimes it's very deeply felt. What this tool requires people to do is to not just go in and express, an opinion on the 1 or 2 or 3 items that they feel very strongly about. It's putting them in your shoes and saying, we have a challenge here as a jurisdiction, as a city, as a county, we have a challenge, and we'd like to get your input, your informed input on how we should deal with that. And that seems to be the thing that really kind of changes the public input equation a little bit, is that you're asking people to think like you, and you're giving them realistic and real constraints that they have to observe. Okay. And then once they do that, they can submit, obviously. All right. And then the last one I want to show you is Elk Grove. And ironically, this was the first one, but they came to us in terms of how California does its planning. They came to us earlier because they're earlier in the planning rotation than the Bay Area. And once again, they did kind of a little video here, just a nice explanation. They put in this nice little feature where people can put in their zip codes. So I'm just putting in mine here in Colorado. And then the idea here is that they can then drop a pin about where they live, so you can get some really nice information about where people are, and kind of help understand maybe there's a geographic area that's not being targeted enough. And so what they did is actually really straightforward. So they just they divide it by council district. Once again, these categories and how you design this is completely up to you, and that's one of the challenges we're going to give you in terms of homework at the end of the day, is to begin to think about how you want to use the tool and how you want to organize it. And so they've got council districts, and so they use the info icons to say, this is council district 1, and people don't know what that is necessarily. So here's a map of council district 1, and then you can go in here and you can start to change the zoning to upzone certain parcels. And as you do that, it's reflected over here, and you're also whittling down your requirement. So Christopher Jordan is the planner, the strategic planning, and I think director of innovation as well at Elk Grove. At some point, it might be useful to have him come and maybe talk to this group. He's been really thoughtful about this whole idea and kind of this concept of adapting a financial tool for a housing type of situation. All right, so this is, once again, it is completely up to you about how you use this, but I just want to just sort of say that I think that a possible flow might be just the way that I presented it to you, where you start with type, like Sutherlandshire did, then you look at density, like Lafayette did, because you're looking then at zones or areas within your jurisdiction, and then you move to parcel. And the nice thing about ultimately ending with parcel is that Christopher Jordan in Elk Grove was very proud to be able to say that that his staff was able, based on public input, was able to recommend sites to the Planning Commission that had no less than 65% support on Balancing Act. And he just thought that was a tremendous benefit in terms of just reducing some of that friction in terms of how a housing element can typically go forward. So I see 2 hands. I see Andrew and Cindy. And so Andrew, I don't know if you want, I'll go to, good. I was going to ask you to put your video on. So Andrew, if you wouldn't mind just saying, who you're with and then your question.
Sure. So my name's Andrew Hill. I'm with the Dighton Bhatia. We're a consulting firm, and I'm currently here on behalf of the city of San Pablo. We're helping them with the housing element update. My question was actually, as you were showing the Lafayette example, I had a specific question about that. I was wondering to what extent we might be able to customize some of this. I like the idea of talking about sort of a district or an area within the city, but I think the question of what density is appropriate can be a little bit obtuse for the average person. Instead, it might be more helpful to say like what type of housing, and have people sort of pick from a menu of typologies, for example. And I'm wondering if the tool allows for that type of customization.
So we're trying to build very extensible tools and to have them be useful for multi-purposes. So you've just asked something a little bit different. And the nice thing is that, whenever we do get a question that is a little bit different, either, good news is we might be able to say, okay, we think we can do that. And then we sort of come up with the settings to do that. Or it might be that we need to make some adaptations. And so I can envision, a way of doing that, that what you just described, but, then a question comes in about, okay, now how does the map come into play here? And what do you want the map interaction to be? And some of that stuff we've got built and some of it we don't. So thank you for asking that question. And once again, every time we get a group of planners who are actually thinking about doing this in real life, we get some different possibilities. So I can think of some ways, but it might be something we should talk through as a use case. So thank you for that, Andrew. Cindy.
Yeah, so I guess my question is also somewhat about customizing. So you showed a map that had kind of larger areas highlighted. Are we able to be site specific, so only target vacant parcels as opposed to like a whole area which may already be developed?
Yes, so let me just show you Eastvale. So Eastvale is a little bit of a combination of Elk Grove and Lafayette. So Eastvale, California, in Southern California, they came to us late in their process, and essentially they had these 10 areas that that really they could focus development on. And unlike Lafayette, that said, should you include, this area or not include? That was a yes, no. They actually set theirs up so that you can increase density at each area. And so if you go to this Leal area, for example, sorry, I just hit my thing here. That should go away in just a moment, I hope. You can go to this area and you can increase density on this area 10, and then it shows up here as this gets darker. So the map shapes are all extensible. I wish I knew how to get rid of this. Oh, you know what? Maybe. I hope this will just go away.
We can't see it, Chris. Whatever's on your
great.
screen, we can't see it. Don't sweat it.
All right, thank you, Dan. It was just my brightness control came up on my monitor because I touched the button. But yeah, so you can use the areas are all customizable, and you have the option of attaching a density interaction. So it's basically a rate for each of these areas. And so you can go down here to number 1, for example. It's a very tiny area right there. But as you increase density, it gets darker. So does that answer your question, Cindy?
Yeah, so if I want to only have vacant parcels as part of this tool, I can just plug in like an APN and it'll find it for me.
So you will outstrip my knowledge of GIS pretty quickly, but I will show you how you do it. It's basically a GeoJSON, and that voice that you heard a few moments ago was Dan Ferguson, our developer, and technical questions like that he can answer. But the format that we can accept automatically is GeoJSON, and then we also have a simple editor that can be used as well. So.
Chris, I just wanted to jump in and add that if any of you are familiar with our housing element site selection tool, the HES tool,
Yes,
the data team that's working on that is going to be working with Chris to see if there might be a way to speed up the parcel selection or GIS coding for you guys. So
yeah, thanks for that, Heather. And I've got a slide at the end that actually has a link to the new HES tool, and I think it's even got a link to the webinar. From what I understand, there was a kickoff of a new version of it yesterday. So it's all intended to work together, and because, like I said, this is a fairly extensible tool. We think we can accommodate these new uses, and if we can't, we'll think through it with you and see what we can do. Darcy.
Thanks, Chris. So I think the question, what happens when you hit the submit button? What does the public see? And then also, what does the city see in the back end? What information? Do we get it in a Excel spreadsheet? What do we get?
Well, let's see. I wasn't, let me see if I can answer that really quickly, just so that you will know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so this one.
Did you have submit? So I was like, what happens?
Yeah,
what is submit?
Okay, so once you have a housing plan, and so this is going back to Lafayette, then you can ask some questions if you want. They ask you to demonstrate that you're not a robot. And what else? Is there another? Must be another question here. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. This is a preview because I didn't want this to actually go on theirs. So the one thing about a preview is that you can't submit. But what you see is you get a high level. They see a high level summary that just shows where they've made additions. And we'll get to that more later. And then let me see if I can actually, I wonder if I can just quickly wonder if I've got that picture. So we give you 3 levels of detail that you can drill down on. I have a screenshot here that just shows the top level for, I think this is for Elk Grove. It is for Elk Grove. And so at the category level, we give you the average of those who submitted. That's what's in this teal bar, right, or this orange bar right here. We give the average of the click. So even if people don't submit, we still tell you what they've said. And typically they all go in the same direction. They just don't go as far because they didn't actually solve the problem. And then we also give you median and mode. And then if we're actually in the live environment, you could click on these and go 3 levels down for detail. And then we also, on the left, you can see the qualitative comments. You can attach a comment to each interaction point. So we're going to go more in depth on this.
Chris, I'm
Darcy.
going to jump in and suggest that you try and get through the presentation because our planners are often like they're asking questions that are already ahead of where we are.
They are, which is great. Okay, so let's so now I want to just have a quick conversation about this and just see where we are. I'm going to launch a poll sorry, excuse me, I launched the wrong one. So I just want to get a sense, we've imagined that those 3 types of use cases are useful to you. And just speaking generally, I want you to just sort of say if you think that you'll be using which of those 3 you think you'll be using. So are you seeing now a poll in front of you? Okay, so if you wouldn't mind, just say, are you thinking about using housing type like Sutherlandshire? And the answer can be yes to all 3. We just kind of want to know, just so we can kind of orient our technical support to you. And maybe give you all about 5 or 10 seconds more to finish this. Okay. All right, so I'm going to close this in about 3 seconds. So 3, 2, and 1, and then I'm going to show everybody what you said. So it looks like the housing type, like Sutherlandshire, that 39% of you definitely plan on using that. That's interesting. Another 58% maybe. That's interesting. Only 3% of you are not at all. So that one looks like it's a hit. The nice thing about that one is it's the simplest to make. It's really easy to make. It wasn't easy the first time through because we had to do a lot of adaptations, but now Dan has made this a selection on a click down menu to sort of orient things so that the settings all change. So that's great. And then there's the density one, similar to what Lafayette did or Eastvale. And it looks like all of you are at least in the running for that. No one's ruled it out, but about half of you are definitely. And then in terms of that parcel one, it looks like all but 2 of you are interested in that as well. So it looks like, Leah, you were the one that sort of helped identify which of these versions we should sort of play out to people. It looks like you were spot on with that. Any comments on this? We've already talked about it a little bit. And Andrew and Brian?
I think my hand was up from before, but I guess one thing that occurs to me about the first tool that you showed us is just asking about the type of units is a little bit of a false choice because it isn't going to be possible to select all single family units and still meet your RENA. But I think if there's a way to say in a particular area, what variety of typologies would you see in that area, then it becomes a more appropriate question, as long as it can be balanced with the fact that the reality is that every community is going to have to accommodate higher density units in order to satisfy the RENA requirements.
That's a good point. I think there might be a way of doing that with existing technology. So we'll once again come back to that more specific use case a little later. Brian.
Hey, yeah, I think some of my questions have been answered, but I was just curious on the inputs and outputs of the tool. So you touched on the GeoJSON and like Darcy already asked, what are we getting out that we can use? Because we have a pretty robust GIS model to support the site assessment, the site inventory, and I'm wondering how I can plug in my data and then use that on the flip side after it's gone through the balancing act. And then my other kind of question is, how do we set this up? Is there a dash?
Okay, Brian, we're gonna get to all of those. So thank you for asking those questions. That's pretty much the next topics.
Okay, great.
Yeah. All right. So now just once again, wanting this to be an opportunity for us all to learn together and for you to share ideas. That's one thing that I like about working in GovTech is that you are not competitors with each other. If you are, it's friendly competitors, and you tend to share ideas very readily and to share approaches. So I want to just get a sense, of what you want to learn about, and the tool can, the tool is not going to be the answer, the be all end all for any of these, I don't think, but it can certainly be a significant help with all of them. So there's, some things that I had thought of, that our team had thought of, and the ABAG team is equity and meeting the requirements of AFFH, communications and hard to reach groups, live sessions. So I'm going to show you some pictures in just a moment of how the tool can be used in live sessions. One of the things I like about the planning profession is that you actually do like a lot of live public engagement, and it's been obviously challenging with coronavirus, but we've got some tools for that. And then just sort of looking at this as a facilitative tool and a leadership tool. And then one thing that's particularly interesting to me is involving the community and actually designing public outreach and actually maybe even building the tool. I'll just say it's a little bit debatable. Does the public actually understand what dwelling units per acre is? And maybe there's a different way of thinking about that. I don't know. And then something other. So I'm going to just show you some pictures. These are people using our budget simulation. But the nice thing is we've got this tool this feature called meeting mode, where you can create a special URL for just a particular session. And the nice thing is that then the results all get shown here and you can talk about it. So once again, that's my idea about using it as a facilitative leadership tool, is that you can actually lead people on a conversation. They can reconsider with more information. They can have interaction, not just with themselves, but interactions with you as the professionals that understand the technical issues and the legal issues. You can involve elected officials if that's appropriate. This is an example of what they see on that facilitator screen. This is for Lafayette. This is actually a live session that they did. And then I'm just going to show you, this is going back to the financial one. This is Kansas City. And the cool thing is that people actually use this. They spend a lot of time. The biggest complaint we ever have with meeting mode is that people want more time because they really get involved. And to me, that's a real sign of success, because if a goal that we have is to put people in your shoes and make them solve the problem that you're trying to solve, when they say we want more time to work on this, then you've got them hooked. And what we found in working with budgets on the other end is that once they understand how hard the challenge is, it changes the environment for decision making and discussion on the other end. That people just sort of get it. There's a hard problem. Maybe there's not one right best answer. I'm going to just participate, and I just have a little bit of faith in what ultimately gets decided. And then also just want to show you that it works very nicely on Zoom as well. So these actually are staff from the city of Lafayette up here on the upper left, and then these are residents down here. Okay, so I've got another, I just want to ask a quick poll on this. So moving to the learning interests, take a minute and just tell me which of those bullet points on the previous slide do you have some interest in learning about together or spending a little bit of time on. And I'm not saying we're going to spend like an hour and a half or a week on it, but just kind of try to address in some way. Okay, so I'll close this in about 5 seconds. So go ahead and click submit or whatever it asks you to do. And I'll end the poll in 3, 2.
I'm not seeing the poll. Are other people seeing it?
Oh, who asked that?
This is Avalon Schultz with San Leandro.
Boy, I don't know, Avalon, but other people are seeing it, right?
Okay, good. Just wanted to double check.
All right, Avalon, sorry, I don't know what
That's
Zoom
okay.
setting is making it so you can't see this. But it does look like 79% have participated. So I'm going to show you the results. And it looks like there's some hunger for learning. So equity and AFFH, everyone is interested in that. 84% say definitely. Communications, hard to reach groups, 68%, yeah, very high support for that. Face-to-face settings, looks like once again 100% are either definitely or maybe on that. Learning opportunity around facilitative leadership, maybe, so there's some decent support. A third of you say definitely, so maybe we'll try to figure out a way to do that, and we've got some good resources on that. And then this question is just asking, are there other needs that you can anticipate now? And so we're going to ask if you wouldn't mind putting that in chat, what you think those needs are. And then this last one is the one about involving the community and sort of designing the process. And that, like I said, this one is one I think could be really useful. So we can do some things on that. Just quickly, for those of you, any comments on this, and for those of you who said yes, what are those other learning needs that we might want to try to accommodate through this user group? Anything? Or is it in chat? And Amy or Garrett, if you're seeing something in chat that we might want to just say out loud, please do so. All right. Oh, all right. Let's just go ahead and keep going. I'm gonna use Heather's advice as a warrant to try to get through my presentation here. Okay, so this is so now I want to talk about support, but just to kind of demystify things and to add, to get to Brian's question just a little bit, I'm actually going to show you how you build a simulation. And it's I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's also not crazy hard. But we are going to spend some time, helping with the nuances. So I'm going to show you what this looks like when you're logged in. So you can go over here. Those of you will get an account. Those of you, some of you already have. I'll give you Garrett's address in just a moment. If you have an account, or if you have a subscription and need an account, I'm also going to give you Amy's address if you want to get a subscription. So you'll have a page over here that says simulations, and then you're going to create a simulation, and then we're just going to call it test for ABAG. And we're going to choose a simulation mode. So we're going to choose housing. Most of you are only going to have housing to choose from. And we're going to say start from scratch. Then we're going to say continue. And so then it opens up a control panel. It really isn't too much harder, with the exception of the GeoJSON. It's really not too much harder than setting up SurveyMonkey. Okay, I'll take that back. But the planning one is a little bit more sophisticated. The one for just budgets really is about as complicated as SurveyMonkey. This one can get a little bit complicated, but we're going to spend some time helping you with it. And so you've got these tabs across here. So your housing requirements, and this is where you enter those housing choices. This is where you set up those entry screens and the exit screens and questions and so forth. Impacts is something we'll do a little bit later. It's kind of an advanced feature, but it could be used, for to help with equity and things like that, map and settings. So I just want to show you, I want to give you just an example of what the input looks like. So there's two ways of getting information into Balancing Act. One is you can enter it just like you would SurveyMonkey, and you just click and type and you're good. And the other one is you can create a CSV. And my guess is that you'll probably want to do a little bit of both. I just want to show you what a sample CSV looks like for housing. So there's really 5 main categories, kind of core, not core categories, but 5 major pieces of information in Balancing Act. So this category, and I'll just give you an example of that. That'd be like right now we're looking at the allocation side, or the requirement side, excuse me. And so like buffer could be a category, or the RENA could be a category where you just put in the number of units you need to find. And in this case, the amount would be 2,114. And there's a subcategory, which is that second layer down, and there's more info. And so these 3 are required, and then these 2 are optional. And so the more info is what shows up, that little bit of text that shows up when you click the blue info icon. And then we haven't looked at this yet, but there's also another optional layer of detail for more details. And more details allows you to put in pictures. You can you put a picture of what a certain type of housing might look like, all sorts of things like that. So that's what this looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. I'm not going to save. And then we're going to bring it into Balancing Act. And so that is sample housing requirements. And so you bring it in, and this is actually it's not exactly Lafayette's, but it's kind of based on Lafayette's. And so it's got the category here, subcategory, subcategory, and then it's got the value over here. And then over here are some the ways you can modify the interaction, modify the question, add additional information, and so forth. Okay, so then we're going to go to housing choice. And I'm going to be ambitious here, and I'm going to show you the more complicated version of this, but I'm going to sort of delineate, kind of how that all works. So let me pull this CSV over for you.
Chris, don't forget to
Yes.
enable maps in the map tab first.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I will do that. Appreciate that. Okay, so once again, you've got the same 5 basic categories. So category, subcategory, amount, and then you've got optional more info, optional more details, and then the more sophisticated version of the CSV, you're really fine if you just want to keep working with these, or even just these on the CSV, you can do that. However, if you want to enter more information, you can. So this is an example of the CSV for the density version. It's the more complicated version that has the map, and it's got the rates and the map that changes based on the density on dwelling units per acre. And so you can set things up here. So question we'll talk about a little bit later, but this is where you put in the starting density. This is where you put in the change amount. And then this is where we'll ask Dan to explain this to you. This is where you just sort of put in what you want the label to be. And then over here is where you put in the GeoJSON. And so GeoJSON is a little bit of a complicated animal, but I would guess that most of you have dealt with this type of stuff before. And so that's how the version of the CSV that does the map and does the density. So I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to go over here and we're going to import that CSV that I just showed you.
Chris, don't forget to enable maps in the map tab first.
I'll get it. Okay. So down here, it's all kind of drop and drag. I'm going to put one up here just because that's numerical. And then as Dan was just saying, I need to enable the maps. So I'm going to go here to maps, and I'm going to say display a map. And then because the shapes are referring to Lafayette, I'm going to pull them up, and it's very easy to find that. And then I've got a map on Lafayette. Lafayette is sort of a horizontal jurisdiction, so I'm going to make the map a little bit more horizontal. And then I could change the color if I wish. But now I've actually got enough information in that I can preview it. And so just with those 2 data files that I just showed you, we actually have a pretty decent simulation. So over here on the left, we've got the buffer, and this is just set up using plus minus. That one column I didn't show you, it actually lets you ask a question if you want, the way that Lafayette did, which is basically what is your assumption for the buffer. We'll show you how to use that too, but for this instance, I've just got it in kind of this plus minus. But you can also make a question directly on the simulation. And then over here, you get RENA and so forth. And if I were to take the time, I could lock this category. It's just a very simple setting. But then the more sophisticated and complex interactions are up here. And so you can click on area number 1, and it takes you down here and it highlights it for people. And then they can start going through and making some changes. And as you can see, it starts to darken as they go forward. And the idea is here, you can say, well, what about area 5? And you can start, looking at some of those changes and so forth. And then you start moving, the needle up here, or the balance bar, until you get to that point where you have a housing plan. So this is going to be the subject. I know that there's probably a lot of questions on this. This is going to be the subject of what we're going to be talking with you over. We're going to propose another 3 hour-long sessions. We don't necessarily have to take an hour long, but I'm actually envisioning them as both us, providing you some content and some instruction, technical support, and then also having a little bit of a workshop. And I'll ask you about that in just a moment. So that's basically how you build it. So let me go back to my slideshow, and just to let you know what's included and what's not. So there's an awful lot included, and I'll say very notably what's included is ABAG making the investment in helping to make everything that you just saw be configurable. It used to be, when Lafayette first did that, it was a couple weeks just to get not even to that point that I just showed you, and now we can do it instantly. And I know that GeoJSON import, that field looked a little bit complicated, and it is, but you can use the HES tool. I'm sure most of you, all of you, are very sophisticated with GIS, and so I think that shouldn't be too much of an impediment. But it used to be that it would take a long time, a lot of hand developing by Dan and others, and now it's actually a configuration. So what we're really trying to do is to make, to support you with software that can do what you need, and also to give you the technical support. So that's what Dan and I, and especially Garrett, will be involved with. So we're going to give you technical support. We're going to give you strategic advice. I mean, we understand you guys are the experts on this, and for a lot of you, this isn't your first rodeo. It's not your first housing element, but we've seen some things that work. Because we've been doing public engagement for 25 years, and we'll give you some advice. And there's also, I think, others associated with ABAG and consultants, and hopefully all of you can actually, provide advice to each other. And we want this this learning cohort, this user group, to be a place where that can happen. And then I just made my next point. This user group is where we're really trying to make this a place where you can learn from each other. And what's not included is we don't do your content, so we can't do your shapes for you. And we also don't do, we can do custom software development, but that's not included. So if there's a little tweak or something like that, or if you've got something, a new idea for something, let's definitely have a discussion, and we'll kind of see if there might be a way to develop it, especially if it's got some broader interest. That it might make sense to make it as a configuration. So the difference between a configuration and a custom development is custom has to be done by hand. What I was saying, Dan spends specific developer time on it, versus a configuration, which is something that is set up for you to be able to set yourself. And configuration is definitely the way to go once you're starting to get a little bit of scale in software. And then this is the proposed plan. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to, we've already got this meeting time. It is going to be a zoo to try to find a meeting time when everybody on this call could actually meet. So what I'm going to suggest is that we just continue to meet at Wednesdays at 9 o'clock, at least for the next 3 weeks, in order to, to stepwise kind of take you through the various kind of background you need in order to build your simulation. What I'd envision these being is that you'd have a little bit of between meeting work, and obviously this isn't like a college class where you're getting homework, but if you do sort of do some work in between, then we actually have the opportunity to do some workshopping at the next meeting. You'd say, I couldn't get my my GeoJSON to work, or how do I configure a particular setting or something like that. And I think my experience tells me that will actually be a very good learning opportunity for all of you. It'll also be a good learning opportunity for us to say, okay, we need to come up with better documentation here. What, that really isn't clear. And then what I'm suggesting after that, because I was really heartened to hear all of the learning opportunities that you all have, that the learning interests, is that maybe every 2 weeks, or maybe every 3 weeks, maybe every 2 weeks for the first month or two, when you guys are sort of deeply involved in this, we would just maybe have a guest speaker, maybe somebody who's expert in communications, or maybe somebody who has done a million housing elements, talk about kind of the leadership challenges of working through ARENA, and just kind of work on those together, and with a focus and emphasis on how Balancing Act can help with that. But once again, not treating Balancing Act as the end, but more as the tool that can help you hopefully have a much more successful engagement than you might have otherwise. And then the support, we're pretty available. We're a Colorado-based company, but we've got people in California. Contact us by phone, by email, by Zoom or Teams chat. We will, within this scope that I showed with you before, we will, get you the help you need to get going. So I just want to sort of check that plan with you. So I've got a couple of questions that has to do with both the, level of comfort with tech generally, but also with the support plan. So do you all have is it in front of you now? The poll? No.
Not yet.
I think,
There it is. Oh, and then it disappeared.
Oh, sorry.
There it
Okay,
is.
now, okay, good. Yeah, so if you wouldn't mind, there's just 3 questions here, asking if you think this, support plan is going to meet your needs. Just about this question about GeoJSON.
Chris, I think you've shared the poll results and not the poll itself. I can see everything is 0.
Okay. Let me try again. All right. How about now? No?
No.
Okay. Shoot. Well, this is my first meeting using the polling. So, are you not seeing it now?
No.
We see the results page.
Huh.
with all zeros.
Okay, well, maybe we can just have a quick discussion. So does what I've proposed, does it seem like it will meet your needs? And do you have any additional ideas that might be useful? Anybody?
And Chris, I'm just going to jump in. It's Amy. We have a couple of questions that we've said we were going to ask live too, just so you
Okay.
know.
All right. So anybody have any comments? All right, should I just take this as a yes? I'm gonna take it as a yes, unless somebody wants to suggest something different or say this doesn't work for me. We're just gonna assume that this is a good plan. Is that safe enough? Shake your head if it's not. Okay. And then the GeoJSON, I'm just kind of curious, is there anybody who just feels like that's just way too complicated, doesn't work? Raina, I saw your hands. Does that seem...
What I said in the chat was I need to start playing with it and
Okay.
figure it out. That's, you know, I'll know a whole lot more after I try it a few times and run into a wall, and then I'll know what to ask.
Okay, good. And there is also a way to edit it just by dragging it. It makes a polygon in the simulation. There's an area where you can just drag and drop if you want. So it's not as precise, but it might be the simplest. Okay.
And there's some mentions in the chat that many of us are not quote unquote GSI people.
Yeah. So, and that might be an area where maybe the HES tool can be helpful and so forth. Any other concerns?
Chris, it's Heather here. I
Yeah.
just put something in the chat that there are a fair number of folks that are saying they're not particularly comfortable or don't have access to GIS. So maybe we can set a separate meeting just for that smaller group that we can get our HES team to help with whatever needs to be organized there.
And Heather, I think that's actually a great idea because the HES tool, this is where I think it really shines. And so this is a great opportunity to learn about that and to put it to use in a public engagement process. So, okay, so we'll add that to our learning list, is just to you know, make sure that people are comfortable with you know, putting the shapes into balancing act, and one of the major resources for that will be the HES tool. So I think that's great.
Chris?
Good. Yes.
We do have GIS staff here, but what would be helpful is some kind of like brief written step-by-step of what we need from them. You know, what type of file, how to import that in. I don't know if there's a tutorial or something like that.
Yeah, and the import file, that's the easy part. And Garrett is working on both a deck that we'll use as a basis to present to you soon, and he's also I just read a draft yesterday working on a file on a help article about how to get information in the balancing act, both using a CSV and entering it directly. So we're right with you on that, Aaron.
Great.
Cindy, you have your hand up?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I have a standing meeting on Wednesdays at 9. So will I just watch the recording?
We will record it. I'm sorry for that, Cindy.
That's okay.
And I mean, if it seems like that's just a rotten time for a lot of people, so let me know. I mean, we could try to reschedule it. It just, I think right now we've got 49 people on the call, and but I am sorry, Cindy.
Yeah, so I'll just watch the recording, like I said.
Yeah, and we are available to you, you know, to follow up. You know, Garrett is our director of customer success, and he's really good at helping one-on-one. But I do think because there is this cohort opportunity, I think it's sort of best to do it as a group, because I think you'll learn a lot more from each other. But yeah, we're available one-on-one too.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Anything else? All right. Well, we are right on time. This is what I think we should do. So we're assuming that plan is good. Apologies to Cindy and anybody else that has a standing meeting then. The next step is for you to get an account. So if you already have a subscription, and I think that ABAG has notified the folks that have subscriptions, make sure to contact Garrett Hernandez Reimer, and he is Garrett at abalancingact.com, and we'll find a way to get a note to you if you don't have that information, or so that you can get in touch with him. We have a number of folks on this call that actually need a subscription. So if that's the case, please contact Amy Flynn. She lives in the Bay Area, and her email address is amy@abalancingact.com. And the cohort is really open to anybody in the Bay Area that's kind of working through these problems. So we, the more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. And then so that's the first homework, is to get an account. Second homework is to decide, kind of get an idea of how you want to use this. What kind of, and when I say type of simulation, that's important. But what I found in public engagement, especially using simulations in public engagement, is really give some thought to what's the interaction that you want residents or the public to have with this. What do you want them to interact with? And like Lafayette uses that dwelling units per acre, and that works for them. And I think it especially works because it then gets demonstrated on the map, which I think is very intuitive to people. Elk Grove wanted people to rule in or rule out sites. Think about what is the interaction that you want, and then we can have a little bit of a conversation about that. And the interaction point, just spoiler alert on Balancing Act, the interaction point is that subcategory level. So it's just like it's ruling in a site, ruling out a site, or where the area that you're looking at for density, or the type of housing. That really think about what you want from that. And then once you get your account, don't be bashful about logging in. We can give you kind of some sample files like the ones I just showed you, so that you can give it a shot. And Cindy and others, you can sort of play with or not. It wasn't Cindy, I don't think I asked that, but you can play with dropping and dragging to make different shapes. We definitely hear you about wanting a little bit of help with the GIS and the HES and so forth. And so we'll schedule something on that. And then I got ahead of myself. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to give it a shot. There's a preview feature on Balancing Act, so you can just go ahead and try it out. And then what I'd like to do is next Wednesday at this time is to sort of hear where how it went, or if you did get a chance, and if you didn't, we'll actually begin providing you some step-by-step content, kind of along the lines of what Aaron was asking you. But if some of you have had a chance to at least share what your goals are, what the interaction you want to try to create are, we can sort of further the conversation that way and make sure that we provide you with technical support to help build that. So I think we're getting close to being complete. I just want to share with you, this is the link to the HES tool and the launch that they had yesterday, and as well as the technical support. And this is how you can contact us. And I think that's really it for me. Heather, did you want to say anything? Heather or Leah, by way of just kind of putting an exclamation point on this, or?
I've been chatting with our HES team while you guys are talking and passing on all your questions. So Samaya on that team, who's our project manager for HES policy data development, will be reaching out to you, Chris, and your team to try and figure out the best way to support the whole project, but also specifically the folks who don't have GIS access or familiarity. So we got your backs. Thank you.
Good. That's great.
Hey, Chris. And then we do have a couple of questions that some people would like asked live.
All right.
Possible. So one of the questions is, and this is related to meeting mode, how long do you recommend we plan for these live meetings?
An hour and 15 minutes. I mean, an hour and a half. I don't know. I mean, I think what residents probably want to do is for their interaction point. So the way I've seen these meetings, and I think the way that Lafayette set them up is that they have some content presentation in advance, and maybe there's 15-20 minutes of that. And then they say, okay, go to your Zoom rooms and kind of do this, talk with each other, and they give them 30-40 minutes to go through it, and then they come back and they debrief. And that coming back and debriefing is what I think is really important, especially if it gives them the residents a chance to interact with the planner or with an elected official, because that's where you say, gosh, I know you say that you'd like that, but it's really not possible. Or why did you put everything over there? And we actually have some other constraints that just doesn't allow us just to put all of the upzoning in one particular spot. So I would maybe see it as an hour and a half. It kind of depends also on how complicated your process is and how many interaction points, but an hour and a half I think would work.
Perfect. And another question, and this might need to be answered after the meeting with the Hess team, but for the versions with a map, will it be possible to turn on additional layers on and off, similar to what the Hess tool allows? For example, would it be possible for users to see an overlay of the HCD TCAC opportunity maps? So
it's a great question. We actually talked about this on a team call with the ABAG folks on Monday night. I think the feeling then was that may be a level of complexity beyond what a tool like this that's intended for public engagement could reflect. But that wasn't a hard and fast decision at all. I can't say we don't have the technical capacity to add a layer right now. But if that were something we wanted to do, Dan Ferguson, our developer, loves a challenge. And Heather, I don't know if you want to comment on that a little bit more too, because that actually kind of crosses out of our strict purview.
Yeah, yes, it's all on the table, but again, with that lens of what is best for public engagement versus planner engagement. So we're looking forward to having your input on that. Our AFFH lead, Christy, has been on this call and will be available to consult on how we might incorporate equity as well. But like Chris said, that wasn't part of the original scope. It's not off the table, but feel free to continue to lift up your suggestions.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, and I have 3 more. I know I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but another question is, can you have more than one subcategory per main category?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, you can really have an unlimited number, although we don't encourage you to take advantage of that feature. But yeah, you can have as many as you want.
Perfect. And then can these maps and charts be exported as image files? And I'm assuming
Dan?
maybe that's from the admin.
Dan's gonna have to answer
the charts and the results in the client results each can be exported as image. The maps that you see on the front end, you could do screenshots of them. That would be the best way to get an image, probably.
Okay. Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks, Dan. I wasn't even thinking about on analytics, but yes, the charts on the analytics page are all exportable and can be pasted and downloaded and so forth.
Perfect. And then the last question here is, can the Hess tool map be seamlessly imported without the need to use GeoJSON? So I think that's something we'll need to discuss.
Yeah, and Dan, why don't you comment on that as well? I think we've already kind of talked about that. I think there is some need for conversion, but Dan?
Yeah, we'll have to work with Somaya and the team over there to get that ironed out. But it's good to know that a lot of the cities don't have GIS staff and folks on board. So like Heather said, we'll work to back you guys up on that.
Yeah, and Dan, I believe, because we did have some conversations about this, I believe when you were designing the way that shapes can be inputted into Balancing Act, that you chose GeoJSON because it's a shape format that can be relatively easily converted into from other formats. Is that right?
Yeah, the standard GIS apps, ArcGIS and stuff, they can export to GeoJSON. So it's sort of a standard format.
Yeah.
And Chris didn't show it, but there is also the ability to actually draw shapes right in the browser. If you're doing simple shapes, that could get you there.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, so it shouldn't be too much. I mean, there's a task about getting a shape from Hess into Balancing Act, but it shouldn't be something that's crazy hard. I mean, there should be a fairly repeatable pathway to say, okay, if you Act convert it this way. Did I say that right,
And then
Dan?
we had,
yep.
Okay.
And then we just had 2 more trickle in.
All right.
Can you create housing allocation scenarios according to income level categories? Or could you only control for this via housing types, example, multiple family, which could be considered as affordable?
That sounds like a really important question. And honestly, I would need to know more about it to be able to say. I think we'd probably need to do some things to make that possible, or at least it's probably more than just coming up with a use existing features. But it sounds interesting, and we'd actually love to learn a little bit more about what those requirements would look like.
Perfect. And then the last question is, can all these city examples like Lafayette be accessed to dive deeper to help instruct them on what might work? And I can kind of take that over. I'll go ahead and I will, once you send me an email so we can get your admin all set up, I can go ahead and send you those examples of everything that Chris showed here. And then you guys are able to play with it and go through that. But as Chris alluded to earlier, we will have some knowledge-based articles coming out very shortly, onboarding decks, and then I'll be your primary point of contact. And this is again, Garrett at abalancinact.com. So I'm here to help you with all that type of stuff.
Yeah. All right, we're only 6 minutes over, which is great since we've got a pretty large group. Let's go ahead and just call it quits for now. We will send out a standing, or at least a meeting invite for the next 3 weeks for all of us to meet a Wednesday at 9 o'clock Pacific time. And we'll send out some resources in between and really look forward to creating these tools with you. It's a tremendously important project that we're working on with you, and we're excited to see it get underway. So thank you all. Take care. Bye.